Good morning, everybody. Great to be here. I need to try and get my clicker to work. I have to point that way, apparently. There we go. Okay, so Ed and I are going to spend 45 minutes with you today to talk about leveraging AI in sales intelligence to create a growth flywheel. Just in terms of quick introduction, so I'm John Veichmanis. I'm the COO at carwow. I've been with the business for about 18 months, and I lead marketing, commercial, and our country operations. We operate in the UK, Germany, and in Spain. Prior to joining, I actually worked at a company called Farfetch, which is a similar marketplace business. I joined back in 2015 after our Series D investment. We were around 400 people and grew the business to 4,500 people actually when we IPO'd back in 2018 in New York. Despite my youthful glow, I've actually been working for about 27 years, which is quite frightening, and typically worked in lots of technology, consumer technology companies, so Apple, Dell, Expedia. And I've always, certainly over the last decade or so, had a real interest in and fascination with how we can use AI to improve our ability to enhance direct relationships with consumers. All of the businesses that I've worked in have typically been direct-to-consumer businesses and to some degree had an element of disruption to the way a category may go to market. And I've always been fascinated with the opportunity to use AI, to use the data that we have to improve consumer experience, but also an area of real interest to me is how we allocate capital within the marketing space. So at Expedia, I ran all of our demand generation activities across the world, and there's a huge investment in terms of using customer and product data to make good investment choices in real time. So I wanted to kick off and give a little bit of context to the presentation that Ed is going to give later. So a quick background to carwow. We are actually a car marketplace. As I mentioned, we operate in the UK, Germany, and Spain. We don't own any cars. We don't own any showrooms. We don't operate any service centers. Our mission is basically to provide our end consumers with breadth of choice when they want to buy a new car, or if they want to sell their car, providing them with a dealer network that they can sell to. This means that we provide our dealer partners with a massive huge access to a consumer base that basically either want to research online or potentially now buy their car online. We operate at significant scale. We are certainly the largest operator in Europe in this space. We actually have the most, for those that like cars or are thinking to buy one, our YouTube channel is actually the most popular car YouTube channel on planet Earth, not just in Europe. So we provide both entertainment, but also car reviews for those consumers thinking about buying their next car. And we basically use that as the start point to engage with consumers in their car changing journey. We have around 12 million registered users. We have 3,000 partners on our platform that are selling cars to consumers. Those are both wholesale car dealers, but also the manufacturers themselves, including the likes of Tesla, Volvo, and many of the new startup car manufacturers coming in from the US and Asia. We're around 400 people, and I think it's fair to say that consumers love using our platform for what is the second most financially significant investment that most people will typically make. What's interesting for us, and this is a relatively simplified diagram, is that the automotive category is literally the last large consumer goods category to move from being predominantly offline to some proportion of those sales being made online. So last year, only 1% of new cars were bought online in the UK. And if you look at any category that's made a shift from offline to on or omni-channel, typically it's not a linear distribution. There is a very slow build-up where some consumers have the confidence and the interest to start to research and think about buying something online. And that's obviously the infancy phase. What's quite unique about this category is it's probably the longest infancy stage or phase that I've seen in any category. We've been doing this for 10 years, and only now are we starting to see consumers really embrace online as a route to helping decide which car to buy and then actually buy it online. And in part that's driven by the shift to EVs. Even for the most knowledgeable car buyers, it's quite a complex purchase. It's a very different set of attributes when you think about buying an EV. And something we're really proud of is that 45% of the cars we sell now in the UK are EVs, not plug-in hybrids, but actual electric vehicles. And so what we're starting to see is now a real acceleration into the expansion phase as more and more consumers move online to figure out which car to buy. And that has consequently led to more and more car dealers and the OEMs themselves wanting to build operations where they can sell their cars online. And the point really of the initiative that we've been working with Ed on is that it's a really steep incline. It's perhaps more steep than any other category we've seen because of this very fast acceleration of consumer adoption. And ultimately, that's created a need for both ourselves, but most importantly for our partners, to learn and adapt quickly. And the one thing that we've really been focused on in terms of a collaboration with our partners is actually how do you sell a car online? You know, car dealers, the OEMs, are absolutely adept at if somebody walks into a car showroom, they are very, very skilled at being able to persuade somebody to buy a particular car. Now, many consumers might not actually like certain aspects of the experience, but generally it's a great experience and it's well thought through and well executed. The challenge is when that moves online is that much of the existing thinking doesn't really resonate with a consumer that's having a dialogue with the dialogue between a customer and a dealer online. Many of those concepts that have existed in the past don't really work online. And so one of the things that we've been trying to do is think about how do we help our partners become effective at helping customers make a good choice about the car they need to buy and also therefore drive sales. In terms of how we do this, if you come onto the CarWow website, you can configure pretty much any car in the UK, Germany or Spain. So you can pick your base car, you can change the color, the wheels, the seats, anything that the manufacturer will allow you to do. And then once you've settled on a car, once you've built your shortlist, in this case I've settled on a stylish Peugeot 208, I can then message or call the dealer or I can request a test drive. And it's the area we've been working with Ed now is on the messaging aspect of our service. So this is, if you like, a replacement for a face-to-face conversation in a car dealership. So once I hit that button, I'm talking to, in this case, Gatwick Peugeot. They send me an introductory message. And as a consumer, I can walk through either using messages, I can use calls to build up a dialogue. And the dealer is helping me both configure my car and helping to try and close that sale. And what's interesting at the scale we operate is if you look at last year, we actually had or managed 20 million messages across the 3 markets that we operate in. We actually sell about 13% of all the cars in the UK. So the amount of dialogue between consumers and dealers is immense. And when we read through the inquiries, there's obviously a huge amount of unstructured data that we can use to help our partners make better decisions. So when I joined CarWow back 18 months ago, I actually hired somebody to sit and provide inquiry audits for our partners. So we have one person that literally reads through and is trying to connect the performance of the messages and the things that dealers have said or written, and we connect that back to sales. We have quite a unique data set, and we have all of the messages, and we know which cars have actually been sold. We found an amazing feedback from our dealer partners in terms of the insights that one individual could provide in terms of making modifications to how they were responding to customers.
So the key thing for us is that conversations now in the business, I don't know about you, but on my phone I have like, I think 10 different messaging apps, right? So we're getting emails, we're getting chats, we've got 4 different chat channels, we've got 4 different video conferencing tools. So all of these different communications are coming into the business. Reinfer can connect into all of those in real time. And then the critical way that we believe this value is unlocked is by having a really simple, no-code platform that any stakeholder in the business can use to interpret, understand, and actually take automations off the back of those communications. So if you sit in the promotions team, you can very quickly mine your communications to uncover how those promotions are being received by your audience. If you sit in the product management team, you can very quickly hear every product reference, every I don't know how to do this reference. You really understand everything that's going on in your conversations. And then making that data, that structured data, accessible and usable in all of your other core systems, your CRM tools, your other reporting tools, is the fact that the data's not structured. It's very hard to make sense of that at scale. So what Reinfer does is really extract the core intent signals, what the actual core meaning of every message was. And then once you have that structured data, you can start to do attribution, do kind of statistical analysis of what's driving positive or negative outcomes. And that's really at the heart of our tool. And everything about it is about getting to that state as quick as possible and making it really easy and kind of to maintain. So, you know, when we were initially talking about this this opportunity with John at CarWow, you know, 20 million messages drivers of having a good sales conversation. 3 types of seller. There's no, for someone who comes from kind of a quantitative background, you're like, at what chapter are they going to give me anything that's real, right? Or am I just reading like, you know, Steve's pontifications, you know? So, so if you look at 2 conversations, you know, there's no, you could say, oh, maybe conversation 1's better, maybe conversations 2 better, this was good, that was good. It's kind of hard to make sense of what were the really impactful events there and what was the really impactful sequencing going on. But, you know, luckily, CarWow has a very clear signal, right? They know which conversations resulted in a car being purchased and which conversations actually resulted in no purchase, right? Even at the scale of kind of a few messages or hundreds of messages, this wouldn't be enough. But at the scale that CarWow's operating at, this can provide hard statistical evidence on what's going on in these conversations and allow you to attribute that to what the most effective behaviors are. So you can actually view every single conversation that's happening on the CarWow platform as a little micro experiment. They're not all, you know, they're not all operating against kind of code. They're people. They're trying things out. They operate in different kind of cultures. Every single message is unique and has a kind of different psychology behind it. And then because of that natural variation, if we split the conversations into 2 groups, we can effectively do kind of A/B tests, just as you would with a website, right? No kind of big e-commerce business would run a website without Google Analytics and A/B testing itself. Opinions would not wash. You wouldn't have a $1 billion revenue website without any web analytics, right? That would be insane. But most human sales organizations operate like that. No attribution, no statistics, no truth, just opinion. So if you can split the data set, if you can split the conversations into the conversations that had sales, the conversations that didn't have sales, and then you have this structured data against every message, you can start to provide hard statistical evidence on what behaviors are actually driving positive outcomes. And it's super powerful. Sales or prohibitive of sales, right? So we did that. We discovered over 120 different intents, which all had predictive power on sales outcomes, right? These are things about, salespeople potentially apologizing, specific questions around financing, specific questions around what the next step was, specifications, extras, stock, timescales. So, a mixture of kind of hard, fact-based kind of steps that you would need in the logistics of buying a car, and also behavioral kind of qualifiers or sequencing or kind of human interaction kind of intents. So 120 different intents, and then we looked into the results. Okay, so how do these intents, how predictive are they, and what sequencing do they have to have the best outcome on sales? So, I mean, I think I'm just going to walk through just a few of these results because I think they're really kind of powerful and simple, right? So, managing expectations. These are kind of all of the best, these are actually a validation of the best behaviors you want. And so, you know, let people know how long things are going to take. And when they take, establishing needs. Abilities is just too much, right? So you need to kind of understand what's important for the buyer so that you can guide them to getting the things that they need and not focus on the things that are relevant. You know, some people do this much better than others. Some people do it earlier and really qualify what that is. And especially kind of, I think in the car market at the moment, there's a lot of kind of supply chain issues, a lot of maybe the options that were available before, you know, COVID and sewers and all of these things was going on, are now a little bit more constrained. So if you really understand people's needs, you can better guide them through some of that complexity. Doing this well, doing it early, 20% higher conversion. Making it personal, right? I mean, it's a small thing, but if you really like tailor your messages to the individual and the specifics of what their journey to that point, 10% higher conversion. Not being pushy. So one of the key things that we found is that if you push promotions or if you push deals or financing plans too early in the conversational process, in the sales journey, you can actually really turn people off. So these are things that are useful and can have positive outcomes if done at the right stage, but if you do them too early, you can actually have a negative impact on sales. Knowing the competition. So I think one of the things, you know, the salespeople are often very, very busy. They have more inquiries than actually they can naturally deal with. They have to make some kind of decisions about who they're going to focus on, who they're not going to focus on. You know, it can often be, you know, I'm involved in sales at my company. You know, you can often kind of feel offended when someone mentions like an alternative way to solve this problem. But actually, it's one of the most predictive, most valuable signals. If someone knows the competition, they're most likely to buy, and you should probably prioritize that customer and treat them, you know, get them what they need as quick as you can. 140% more conversion when customers say this up front. Yeah, sharing bad news early. I mean, these are all the behaviors you would want a good kind of salesperson to have, but, you know, letting people know how, like, if there are any issues with the order that they want to have, letting them know that as soon as possible, letting them know the impact that that's going to have on their particular purchasing journey. If you give people the information, you give it to them cleanly and upfront, bad news shared early is actually a net positive. Yeah, and then this is just kind of a corollary to that, just really being clear around the whole process and that path to execution. It's really, really valuable. So we've found a whole bunch of these kind of statistical hooks, these conversational patterns, which are really super predictive of sales. We can interpret this against every message in real time. We're now in the process of rolling this out. So every dealer can see how they're performing against these core statistics. Every sales manager can see how their team is performing, and every individual salesperson can see how they're performing. So everyone is getting super actionable. It's really simple feedback. It's not kind of some dark arts of sales. It's really actionable feedback around how every person involved in the sales journey can improve their kind of conversational design, their interaction patterns. So it's super exciting. I think that's everything I wanted to present. I thought we'd just do a quick Q&A with John. So, yeah, I think the first kind of thing when I first met you, you talked super convincingly around, the value of data to kind of help drive hypotheses in a kind of growth engine. I wonder if you could expand on that.
Yeah, of course. I suppose one of the nice things about having spent most of my working life working for businesses that are classified or badged as direct-to-consumer businesses is that you have that connection point with consumers, and therefore you have the ability to try things very, very quickly to assess the impact. And I think as a marketeer, I obsess obviously over the product experience that we provide, but also understanding how to drive efficiencies into the marketing program. So whether that's testing creative, testing strap lines, that there is so much we can do to drive efficiency into our business. And ultimately, if you go back to the ethos for any marketplace or platform business, is typically we should be able to provide distribution, so in our case, leads to car dealers more efficiently than they can do themselves, because we have more data. And if we use the data, it's like having money in the bank. If you don't do anything with it, it deteriorates in value. Our focus is always about building a culture, actually, to say, well, if our role is to provide efficient distribution to partners, then we have to use the asset really respectfully and carefully and invest into it. So we've always, in every single business, built a culture around testing and learning to learn quickly, to fail fast, and to ensure that we're actually doing what we're supposed to do. I think the most important thing for me, though, is I suppose most marketers would tell you exactly the same answer. I think the thing that's most important, particularly in scale-up businesses, if you think about a business that needs to grow 50, 60, 70% every single year, then you have to ask the team to deliver new initiatives year over year. Every single quarter, we need to find new things to deliver that will drive that growth. You can't just rely on the things you did last year. And therefore, your risk appetite has to be huge. You really have to try new things. And I suppose the thing I like most actually about test and learn is creating a culture of risk, trying things, allowing everybody in the organization to test stuff. I suppose when I started work 27 years ago, most of the ideas flowed from the top. And certainly now as an executive, most of my ideas are crap, actually. And much of what we've done with using test and learn as a cultural phenomenon in the business is to allow everybody to come up with ideas. And I think if you join a company and it's your first job, and you can actually have a pretty profound impact on the business, that's phenomenal. And one quick example of this, actually, from when I worked at Expedia, we tested everything, and there was a really young product manager joined the business, and he thought, well, I never stay in hotels, and so he signed up to the Home and Away affiliate program, actually. So Home Away, which is now Verbo, so it provides alternative accommodation similar to Airbnb. And he basically signed up and started adding some of the listings for alternative homes into the hotel listings to see if it could improve revenue per visit, because that was his goal. And he ran a test for about 24 hours, and it did increase RPV really nicely. And then he presented at our test and learn forum. So Dara, our CEO, would sit and everybody would watch and walk through the results so we could learn collectively. And then about 3 months later, Dara stood up in front of the whole company and said, we've bought Home Away. And I was always convinced it was probably based on that one test and learn result that somebody at the beginning of their career put together. And I think that's, for me, is truly inspiring in terms of if you can build that into the culture.
Yeah, it's amazing. And actually, that's one of the things around data is if you can put it into every employee's hands, if you are a younger employee, you're not just going to pontificate an opinion, but if you have some data, you can feel enabled, empowered, to come and bring that idea. That's super interesting, and I think that's really like something that we're keen on as well. Is like every kind of data, every kind of bit of data that the business collects has value to people outside of the people that may own that data or manage that data. How can you like safely kind of democratize access to it? Because there'll be product insights, there'll be support insights, there'll be sales insights.
I think that's why what we've done with the conversations in the business, I suppose we had many perspectives that we would tell car dealers particular things that we thought were the right things to do. And in many cases, they probably were correct, but there were probably many things that actually we've not prioritized or they weren't in the right sequence. And again, I think it just gives our team that deal with our dealer partners every day feel really confident that they can provide a good service, and that they love sitting in the tool, understanding how they can provide a really good support and actually learn how to use it effectively. And again, I think that empowerment is really important.
Amazing. And so I guess, it's kind of pretty clear what we're doing in the medium and short term, but how do you ultimately see, more broadly, even within the CarWow platform, like that sales journey evolving, both for, sellers, the dealers, and buyers? I mean, how do you see that kind of, I guess, in a bit in the longer term?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what we're doing at the moment is an amazing first start, but it's still reliant on, there's lots of human intervention between ourselves and the partner. So I would love to provide, really to productize much of the work that we've done so that the dealers have recommendations in real time. I suppose we've talked about in my head a sort of Grammarly, if you like, of sales advisors. So if a sales advisor is sitting responding to a customer, we could actually score or grade what they're writing in real time. We could make recommendations of perhaps different ways to phrase something that they're writing, or to rephrase the intent of what they're putting together. So I would love to do that. I suppose having humans and the AI working together to provide a better experience for customers, but also most importantly, actually, to scale. The biggest problem when we look at that S-curve, the biggest challenge for many businesses as you make that shift is you're still running your offline operation, so you've the costs of running that, plus then trying to run an online operation at the same time. You're adding more costs there. So actually, how can you create great experience efficiently?
Yeah.
And I think the AI and the human working together, I think, is that's where there's a massive opportunity, I think.
Yeah. And that's such an interesting thing, is that everyone always thinks, kind of growth or cost, and margin, like kind of two separate business objectives, but they're often so closely aligned, right? That actually
sweet spots between.
Amazing. Cool. So I think that's everything from our side. If there's any questions in the audience, we'd love to answer them. Great. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. Just a question on CarWow. If you could maybe explain in more practical details, how do you kind of organize the training of your sales force based on these hints provided from this conversation? So plus 140% of chance to concretize sales, and how do you track the results based on which hints were used? I don't know how you do that, but very practically, how does it work for you to increase your revenues? Thank you.
No, great question. So in terms of the output, so we have an account management team, so a customer success team that sit with our partners every single month, or in many cases for the large ones, they will sit and work with the partner on a weekly basis. So we will have a structured meeting where we walk through all of the output in re-infer. And so we will talk about their performance against the key criteria that we've identified that will drive success. And we'll actually show them examples of the conversations that are working and the conversations that aren't, and in their overall performance. And so that's how it works. And that's ultimately, I think, what we'd like to productize to some degree so that we can do it somewhat in real time, because then it really scales.
Great. Yep.
I've got, I guess, questions for John and question for Ed. John, did you put a business case together for using re-infer? And do you have any data on how CarWow business before and after using re-infer? Like, did you have an increase in sales and so on? I don't know how long it's been going.
I can answer that.
And the question for Ed is, could you comment on some of the other applications? You had other businesses up on your slides where you've kind of developed something similar. Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah. And just in terms of our business model, so we're paid when a customer inquires with a car dealer. So ultimately, we want our partners will spend more with us if they can convert more of those inquiries. So we have ultimately, I suppose, a shared set of goals between ultimately Ed, CarWow, and our partners to convert more of those deals, because that will drive more volume for them. And so, we have seen a significant the partners that we're working with, we've seen a significant improvement in their conversion rate, which we can obviously measure. And that in terms of the business case, I suppose a little bit of conviction, I suppose, that we thought this is a really, really good idea. I suppose ultimately we want to be thought leaders in the industry. We want to, not just help our partners drive a better results. Of course, that's really important, but we also want to help the industry. And we thought this is a unique data set. Nobody else has 20 million conversations between consumers and car dealers. And this is an amazing opportunity to actually build some insights that potentially challenge some existing preconceptions, and to Ed's point, actually put some structure and proof points around what works and what doesn't. And we have an audience that desperately wants to understand that. So to me, it was there's a level of conviction, I think, in a scale-up that you've got to try new things and innovate, and that was the rationale for it.
Great. And then on the other use cases, so for us, it just goes back to what I was saying, I think, at the beginning of my section, is that every conversation, there's either a problem that needs to be fixed or a sales opportunity which needs to be closed, and then there's always this work, right? And so Reinfer is really kind of about trying to change that upside, downside kind of cost calculation. So we actually help our clients automate a lot of messaging activities. There's often a lot of transactional work, logging something in a case management tool, forwarding something to the relevant partner. So we can automate a lot of that stuff, but the core value is around uncovering the drivers of what good service is and uncovering inefficiencies and kind of ways to make the business better. Great. I believe there was a question back there, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation as well, really interesting. I just had a question. I suppose, especially in the automotive sector, there are many variables that influence the purchase journey, as we know. I've done a lot of automotive work as well. How do you deal with attribution then? Specifically, I can see how you can control the variables in your business directly with partners. How do you deal with those variables that you can't control and the black box of Google and all the stuff that we have to deal with any consumer purchase journey? And are there plans to factor in some of those data points to expand the flywheel? And it's a tough question, granted.
Yeah.
But,
I was actually talking to Ed beforehand, actually, about some of the things we can do. So, again, I think I mentioned that it's my job to provide our partners with efficient distribution. And, of course, we buy some of that distribution from Google, from Meta, etc. And we obviously use a number of quantitative data points to aid our capital allocation decisions. But I'm really interested actually in taking this data, particularly when we think about audiences and particular segments of customers. It provides us with a really rich data source because we obviously swap the unstructured for the structured now, and therefore we can use it in that space. And I think there's lots of opportunity there. Again, when we think about test and learn, we've not proven that yet, but I think there's a good opportunity there to use this again to drive more efficiency into our marketing campaigns and actually into the core products as well. So when somebody comes to the sites, how can we help them? Again, based on the things that they're doing, the questions they're asking, how can we serve up different content to those users ourselves? So yeah, I think it's a huge. I'm on a personal level really excited about trying out how we can use the data to better effect.
Great. One more question.
Hi. My question is for John. And so I see that carwow has a lot of conversations going on. 20 million is a lot.
Yeah.
So AI can obviously be applied very well. But what about a company where you don't have such a scale? How does Reinfer work in that situation? Or can it work in that situation?
Yeah, for sure. I think when you really need the scale is when you to do this hard attribution to the sales outcome, because it's just a binary kind of yes or no, and then to do that kind of attribution to a specific event, you actually do need quite a big corpus of conversations. What you can do when you have a smaller team with a much lower volume is really just understand what the conversations are about, right? So it's often, our clients often implicitly know kind of what their conversations are about, but when they use our software in a relatively small team, it's the first time they have hard numbers around that. And actually, going back to John's earlier point, is it's often the people in the ground that really know the problems of the business, but they don't actually have hard numbers to build a business case to convince the executives. And so they're often, that's often one of the best ways to kind of get consensus in a group of people, is just to bring the data and say, well, actually, the biggest, reason that customers contact us with a complaint is X, right? And that happens for this product. And without that data, you're just another person kind of, with an opinion, the classic kind of wonderful. Great.
Good.
Okay.
I think that's it. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having us. Cheers.